Jan Heghem. I'm in the management of the Department of Innovation and Commercialization in Vestland County. A special hello to all of you who participated yesterday. We were up to 40 together at yesterday's event, and that's very good. Vestland County is quite a big county with difficult topography. It's on size with Belgium, and normally we cannot say that the weather is similar from south to north, but today I think we have cold weather at the coast and in the deep fjords. We just mentioned around 10 degrees below zero. And I understood from the representatives from south of Europe that it was rainy, and so we have different conditions as we speak. This event today will be recorded on video because due to the fact that we want to have documentation of what's done and said. I hope we will have a nice event during the day. Myself looking forward to the roundtable discussion, but before that there are several things to experience. We will have a break at approximately 10 to 11 and to 10 past 11, around 20 minutes, to collect coffee and do other necessary things. And to lead us through today, I leave the word to Lars Hustveit, who's the father of the P-Iris project, as I consider it. So Lars, please, stage is yours.
Thank you, Jan. I will upload a presentation for you. I clicked on, did the right one come up, the core of P-Iris?
It did, and if you put it into presentation mode, it's nice.
Yeah,
Thank you. Will,
yeah. Yeah, so my name is Lars Hustveit, as Jan told you, lead partner and working for Vestland County Municipality. It's correct, as Jan told you, that I took the initiative for this project back in 2016, and it has been a pleasure to work on the project. So this should be a short introduction. What is P-Iris? What is the core of P-Iris? Initially, I want to say good morning to Ingvild, our project manager for all the years except for the last one. So it's not Brussels that are in the center, but Ingvild has been. And also good morning to our partners during the 4.5 year, soon 4.5 year, from Croatia, Finland, Slovenia, Spain, and Italy. You will see the logos of their organizations at the bottom of this slide. And of course, good morning to all others taking part in this final P-Iris conference. Inter-Europe projects is about improving implementation of policy instruments, and the full title of our project explains our ambitions. As policies to improve rural areas innovation system by professionalizing networking activities and use of innovation tools. And here you can also see why it's the abbreviation is P-Iris. I think also it's important to say that before I go on to this one, maybe I will go back. It's important to say that rural areas cannot copy lessons learned from urban clusters. We need to define methods working within rural innovation networks. So that has been a very important starting point for this project. And the other important starting point is that we need to include skilled and creative youth. The young people have been in the focus when we are discussing methods and so on. Today we should have used the whole day to present our results. Instead, it will be the time limited to what is reasonably to use for a digital meeting, 2.5 hours, we have decided. We therefore have to limit the program to some key messages and a few concrete examples. Then the core of PIRIS, and I think it is to build bridges to share knowledge. That is the key. And I try to make PIRIS in one slide, and it's two important dimensions of PIRIS. Is the internal one, the quality of innovation networks, the quality of managing innovation networks. And the external, how outside support can be benefiting the work of an innovation network. And as is already said, a prioritized target group, young people. So we have been working on network management. We have been working on how to establish an innovation network, how to maintain the network, and how to renew and restructure an innovation network. And this is something we will come back to during the presentation from Ingjerd Skogside later on in the program. The other dimension is how to access necessary aid. We have been discussing what are the important support for an innovation process, and we have been considering this step by step and using the technology readiness level system, as many Europeans do, and looked for how is finance available during the different steps, how is advice available during the different steps, and how is infrastructure available during the different steps. And I will come back to this, but that is the core of PIRIS. And about the outside support, we have also been discussing how this is seamless from one step to the other. We have also been discussing fragmentation. Fragmentation could be viewed as internal for the actors in the innovation network, but it's also about fragmentation of the support system. So there are also two dimensions when we are discussing fragmentation within PIRIS, and the aim is to have a holistic support system, and the aim is to have skilled network management. Just want to be sure that I have said that the key things I wanted to say. Okay. Building bridges to share knowledge is about skills to make it happen. So I wanted to end my presentation of the core of PIRIS by focusing on people. Here represented with a study trip in Lombardia. I don't remember the year, 2019, I think. But it's about people, building bridges to share knowledge. The core issue of this is about skills to make it happen. I thought I should have to use a lot of time, but I see that I've done my presentation very quickly, so then I will leave more space to the presentations coming up. It will be first Daniel from PINS in Croatia, because the three of our partners have been working especially on co-working spaces, and then afterwards the Toolbox, which is connected to network management, as shown in this figure, trying to explain PIRIS in one slide. So please, Daniel, do you want us to load up your presentation, or would you do it yourself?
Hello, Lars. I can try it by myself, and then if I will not be successful, then I can ask you.
Okay. It's okay. We can see it.
Okay, that's great. Please. So, hello to everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about co-working spaces in rural areas, which was generated to PIRIS Inter-Europe project, which we start in 2017.
Maybe Daniel, you will use the presentation modus for your.
Yeah. Is it okay?
Then okay.
Okay. So I will shortly, in 15 minutes, try to present our pilot actions actually from Croatia, Slovenia, and I will also speak a little bit from experience from Finland. So at the beginning, during the PIRIS project, actually we start with the topic of discussion of remote working in rural areas, even before this COVID-19 pandemic. I remember in 2018, in a meeting in Finland, we discussed opportunities for rural areas and what these opportunities are for especially younger people who are actually one of the target group of our PIRIS project. So during the PIRIS project and this newly COVID situation, we all know that this actually current state of bring us remote working to many medias, and all of us, including the people from urban areas, now see these things from a different perspective, as rural areas shown a lot of potential in remote working. So at the beginning of the project, a low degree of cooperation between public sector, educational, scientific and entrepreneurial sector was the main obstacle in rural areas, which we want to this project to get through and to try to do something more. Just a minute. So the first phase of the project, during the first phase of the project, we actually was a little bit introduced with good practices in all other partner countries. So we also, in our countries, organized regional stakeholder meetings where we discuss about possible pilot actions in our areas. So we saw a few options in Norway, in Slovenia, in Finland, also in Spain, in Italy, where some rural co-working spaces are already built. And we wanted to discuss with our stakeholders in our areas, in our countries, in Slovenia and Croatia and Finland, how to adapt this good practice, but also how to adjust it, because creating of successful co-working space is not just simply creating space, but generating also a sense of community, collaboration, and engagement between different users. So that was the main discussions which we ran during the phase 1 of this project. And we also, during the study visit, learned that there is no one size fits all model for co-working spaces, because every and all environment have a different needs of local people. So during the first phase of the project, we actually discussed with our stakeholders what kind of co-working space and do we actually need the co-working spaces. So after the first phase, we entered the second phase of P-Iris project, where we decide with our stakeholders that co-working spaces is needed for Croatia and Slovenia. Of course, this is connected with our experience from phase 1. As I said a little bit before, so we project partners from Croatia, Slovenia, and Finland prepare 3 pilot actions and pilot projects within the project. So the first one was creating co-working hub for innovative entrepreneurships and events in Croatia. The second one was a web page collecting the space under one web page, part of the action plan in Finland. And the third one was a co-working hub in municipality Litia and Šmartno pri Litiji in Slovenia. So after creating these 3 pilot projects, the main goal was create and establish adequate co-working hub for local and regional entrepreneurs, so-called some kind of rural innovation center where we want to actually create quadriloop helix model in rural areas, which I mentioned at the moment. So what's happened meanwhile, the project, pilot project from Finland was not approved. So we continuing with the implementation of other 2 pilot projects in Croatia and Slovenia. So the main goal, establishing more successful networking in rural areas. So we consider it the communication and cooperation between different internal and external actors and stakeholders. It's really crucial for development of innovative entrepreneurship in rural areas. We want to attract a new generation of creative young talents. We want to provide positive atmosphere in rural areas and creative support creative thinking and problem solving, which are crucial for future joining project in rural areas. So for sure, we want to create opportunities to tap into knowledge, to attract different R&D institutions from surrounding urban areas. So this kind, we want to create some innovative arena in rural areas for future development of rural ecopreneurship system. And for sure, we want to connect local businesses with the regional enterprises and regional R&D institutions around us. So meanwhile, during the phase 2 of the project in Croatia, we start with organization of different educational and motivational workshops. And we find out that we actually need motivation for our rural participants to start to cooperate firstly between themselves, which we managed to establish in the first phase. And then also in the second phase, we start with rural-urban connections as we, during the organization of different educational and motivational workshops, managed to get some great speakers from nearby urban areas. Also, we have one speaker from US, so that's great for us because we actually managed to spill over a little bit of urban knowledge to our rural population in co-working space. So just organization of educational and motivational workshops. We also managed to equip, rent co-working space and do the internal decoration of the co-working space for now on. So the similar things happen also in Slovenia. They do a little bit different approach for their co-working space. They also organize different workshops. We both have this interruption due to COVID-19 situation at the moment, but we will continuing with these activities later on. So I have to say that Slovenian partners also organize different motivations events. The name of these events was Inspire, Cheers, and Brainstorm. But on the other hand, they decide to equip this co-working space with professional photo studio for young startuppers and startuppers who want to start the businesses within the co-working space RISE in Slovenia. And also they organized individual and group work with experts called, the name of this working session was Upgrading Business Ideas for younger people in these areas. So their approach a little bit different than ours. So that's important. So that not one project can fit to all countries, and discussion with the potential stakeholders is very crucial step in the developing of a pilot project. So of course, after this year and a half of project implementations, we saw a lot of challenges. First and very important is attracting more young people to use co-working space, motivation of them, different financing code of equipment. So the first actually users ask for a little bit more equipment for use, like 3D printer, laser engraver, different softwares to work and to start producing some pilot products. Also, one of the challenges in our work was organizing top quality education workshops. As I said a little bit before, it's not easy to get quality educators and people from urban areas. So if we want to motivate young people and attract and establish a really attractive co-working space in rural areas, we really need to organize top quality education workshops for our users. We must emphasize that one of the key value of co-working spaces, places in rural areas is actually socializing. During this last 1 year period, because of pandemic of COVID-19, two, unfortunately, of co-working spaces in Finland have been closed because some co-working and remote working spaces have not been considered as a safe one. We are lucky because we managed to, in Slovenia and Croatia, we still managed to work. We still managed to organize different activities. And let's hope it's not going to happen also here. But this is also one of the challenge in organizing co-working spaces in rural areas. So the lessons which we learned during this period of a little bit more than 1 year, that the rural co-working places are different from the urban ones, because the people in rural areas usually have their own enough spaces for home, in their home for work, but they mostly need a space for networking and socializing. So that's essential of co-working spaces for networking, socializing, and even for fun, actually, because we hope here that after this pandemic, people will need more interaction in the future. So I think that these co-working spaces in rural areas will have a really important role in socializing and developing new ideas. We also noticed that the physical visit to our locations is very important for the users to see how is work, how it's done, what they can get from the location, and to speak with the people. So that's very important things. It's also important to promote co-working spaces in the local community with the digital channels and the word of mouth. That is also very important. Also, we want to, in future, create, as Slovenia already did something like that, multifunctional space in rural areas. So combining this space with some other services like coffee, drop-off point, online maybe market, pop-up store. You can see on the picture here, this is small pop-up store from Rise co-working space in Slovenia. So that's also important because people, especially younger people, would like to have a little bit of fun in these areas, in these spaces. So what we also learned that we will need to find some financing for the further equipping of co-working spaces. We really want to reach some higher position on TRL scale in our rural areas to be some kind of a first step for future innovators. So as I said before, we are rural connection space where the people, we have experienced that there is a lot of people who came to a co-working space. They knew for each other, they heard for each other, but they never actually discuss and exchange some ideas. So that's a great point of view because the people start to speak between themselves, exchange ideas, they even get some new ideas. And on the other side, when we have different events or working spaces, when we call different people from urban areas, we also found there is a potential for future cooperation between rural and urban areas. We also established the first cooperation with startup incubator from the city of Rijeka. So that's also great in our terms that we start these rural-urban connections. We also learned that we can ask public sector to generate some demands for the products which are produced by the members in co-working spaces. We also discuss and see that rural co-working spaces can also be remote working spaces for entrepreneurs. We can through the space create a rural network of knowledge, so we can discuss different ideas and maybe try to produce in the future some one product by a few entrepreneurs within. So the co-working space is still the topic which have been a lot discussed in the media, especially because of the new remote working and studying culture in rural areas. And I think that rural areas can really benefit in the future as the rural areas are a little bit attractive, a little bit more attractive than before. So we also have some examples of first people from the urban areas who came here and asked for the available space. And in Croatia is also now very hot topic, digital nomads from around the world who can also use this kind of spaces in rural areas. So our lessons learned is also that local municipalities get the money and help to grow micro businesses and startups, especially if the co-working spaces are connected with business support organizations who can also give additional knowledge and advices to SMEs. we managed to create stronger and committed community because of networking, speaking, participating on joint events, and the people build stronger local community. So entrepreneurs like startups, micro and small companies find many positive externalities for them, and that's also great. I must say that people, mostly in rural areas, are still more introverted. More time is needed to get their confidence. For this reason, really public support for rural co-working is needed, especially for starting and working in the first 3 to 5 years period, because there is no market-oriented co-working space, I think, in Europe, and also wider without public support. So that's one of the key issues, which is very important if somebody wants to start rural co-working space. We also have some examples from Finland. I also said that 2 co-working spaces are already closed, so public support really for vital rural communities is needed to help us to start and to develop further co-working spaces in rural areas. So that's from my side, Lars, about co-working spaces in rural areas.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It was important for us to present the co-working spaces since 3 of our partners gave special attention to this. So thank you very much. And I think we are also now back online with the time. So I think we will let Ingjerd Skogseid have the floor for her next presentation and a launch of our toolbox. You need to take off your, yeah, you did. Okay, then
Lars, I think there's a question before that.
Yeah, but maybe we will take it after Ingjerd have done her presentation, so we see for the time. Is that? I hope that's okay, Ricardo. Ingjerd.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've been given the pleasure to present the digital toolbox for strategic leadership in innovative networks. I've had this project as a work for many years because I was part of the initiative, the original project where it was developed with my former employer, Western Norway Research Institute, who together with the local university college had a project where we looked into innovation in rural places and conditions and barriers for it. One of the outcomes of that project was the Toolbox. This was developed further in collaboration with Sogn og Fjordane County Council and was taken into PIRI's project. And the last step has been to make this a digital version of the Toolbox. And I'll tell you a little bit more about both the tools and the digital version of it. Innovation in rural places, conditions and barriers. Explored what are the conditions for making innovation. One of them was looking at networks and how networks could be part of this innovation process. And one of the important findings was that innovative networks in rural area are important to balance the urban networks. Working together makes it easier to connect to other networks, other places. When you come as a single company, you don't have the same power as you do when you come as a group. And you become more interested or interesting for the urban networks to participate with when you are having a bigger force behind you. The other thing we saw was that there is a need for a toolbox for developing innovative networks, because we saw that many of the networks we studied had different kinds of problems. So how can you work to overcome those issues? In the toolbox, there are tools to help you identify issues, to make decisions on your development choices, but it's not meant to be a toolbox that you sort of go through step by step from A to Z, as I say here, but dependent on what your challenge is, you should pick up the tool that is what you need, and then solve that specific problem. You can also use the toolbox to reflect on your situation and in that way maintain the innovative network. This circle is core in the toolbox. It has all the elements in the toolbox identified it, and this is where I see the connection to what Lars was talking about earlier about establishing, maintaining, and renewing. The tools that are listed here can be used in different settings in a network, can be used as part of establishing it. Then you should be aware of what you should create as member benefits, how you should be working with innovation, and how you should be building legitimacy for your network so others want to join you in the network. But it can also be used in maintaining, seeing is anything here not feeling right? How can we develop? What is it that we need to address to continue to thrive? I will take you into a little bit of tools. I choose to not use the digital version of it because it becomes so much flipping, but I just want to talk a little bit about this dynamic of a network, because that's the core in this. For a network to grow and to exist, you need to have benefits for the member. They need to join, they need to participate, and it needs to be attractive to do so. Also, the network needs to develop new knowledge and to share it among its participants. So it needs to create an environment where you have this kind of sharing and developing, and where the members see that they have benefits from participating. And that also comes to innovation. It needs to be something new produced by the network, something that would not have been possible without the network. It doesn't necessarily have to be that a big thing, a big major innovation, but seeing that you have benefits of being here, seeing that it gives me something to be part of a network, I'm improving my production by being part of it. And the network needs to develop relational resources, both within the network. The people who belong to the network needs to have good relations, but you also need relations to resources outside, to universities that are located other places, could be international or national, to skilled people, other places that can contribute to developing the network. And you need to work on mobilization of resources, and resources can be both human resources, the people with skills. You need to get the members that you already have involved in the initiatives that the manager is starting up and seeing how they can benefit from it. But you also need to look at how can we involve others outside our network to give knowledge contributions. And you need to acquire funding more effectively in a network than what can be done as an individual partner. So having these dynamics working is core in having an innovative network. And you need legitimacy. Participants and others outside the network have to see the network as credible and positive, as a positive force. And looking at Vestland County municipality, the region here is said to be the cluster region because we have so many clusters. So it sort of becomes a positive thing to belong to a cluster. And we have in rural area, we have innovative networks and some of them linking up with the clusters. So it's getting a dynamic of this and making sure that the whole region are getting a benefit of this cluster initiative, this innovative network initiatives are important. And we also see that networks need to be seen as interesting. So if you have a free rider, someone that takes gets a benefit from being outside your network, but it might they can use the knowledge you are creating, even if they're not part. It's a positive. It's a sign of success. So one shouldn't be too protective of your ideas. One should be open to those around, and then those free riders in one period might become a member in another because they see the benefit of what they are doing. And it also shows that you are willing to share knowledge. It's a different way of working than being protective of what you are achieving. But in networks, there will always be things that you are competing about. You might be competing with your best partner in the network. So you need to find the balance between competition and knowledge sharing and co-development. Very much goes back to this institutional capacity. And of issues on the former slide, institutional capacity is in many ways the sum of all those. And it tells something about your ability to handle change. External change forces, threats that are coming from outside, the COVID-19 as an example, what does that create of opportunities, and how is that relevant for us? And then how can you work together in a network using the knowledge, the context that you have, and mobilize this to give a response? And hearing the former presentation about co-working spaces and what you have been able to do given the threat of COVID, it's just how can we mobilize to make this still work even if we have this threat? How can we manage to cope? And how can we then create change and use the opportunities that external change forces are providing? And it is about using the resources, the knowledge generation resources in the network and mobilizing these to address these challenges and getting results out of it. And as Lars was talking about fragmentation, path dependency and lock-ins are threats that needs to be overcome. Fragmentation can both be within the network, but it can also be in a society that some are running along and doing what they think is the best for them and not thinking about the rest. But in COVID, at least in Norway, they are talking about this dugnad. We need to work together to address the threats that we are facing. We need to stay at home in our home offices as a part of a dugnad. And in a way, these are important factors to drive change, basically. Coming back to the circle and this establishing, maintaining and renewing. Sometimes if you're starting a new network or just starting to work with this developing of innovative networks, even if it's an existing network, getting a status of your network. Who belongs here? What are their contexts? How much are we working? and then seeing how can that be addressed. So how should we be working? How do we want to work in the network? So the dynamics of the networks, and you can sort of go in and come to these places or come to these tools from a different set of starting points, basically. I then want to take you into the Toolbox, the digital version of it. We have two addresses for it, but I have the innotool.no, and it's also an alternative one, and I'll right now I didn't find it in my I didn't find it, but we have tools in the toolbox, and it's an introduction of how to use this and what you find. And you have the different tools in here, and when you go to the tools, you get on short text about why this is important, and you can go to the next page, and it's also sized and dimensioned a bit to fit different platforms, for instance, mobile phones and others. And you can read about what is innovation, what are getting short introductions to it. And you also have cases. Here is a case from the PIRIS project. So you can see how have others used this. So it's sort of built up that way. And you also have exercises where you can work on your own. You can sit down either as a manager or as a participant in a network and sort of thinking about how can I contribute to developing this network, or as a collective, for instance, in a board, or how can we develop, what can we address to make our networks more productive. This is our first version of it. At the moment, we have no direct plans to develop it, but we have been thinking that, and sort of this is, it doesn't store what you're doing, but you can write things into the tables here, but it's not stored. So if you want to keep it, you need to take a copy of it. But we have been talking about looking for funding which could make the tool more as a workbook also, where you can store your things. But we haven't concluded that yet, so that's a way to go further. Okay, if I then go back to the presentation, there is another further development. That's a new project that Western Norway County Council is working on. It's an Erasmus Plus project for active youth, where they are building on one of the key messages from PIRIS. Number one, the youth as a key target group. Digital skills of young people must be recognized as a potential change maker in rural areas. And the Yes Specialist project will use the Toolbox to work with entrepreneurship and youth in rural areas. And you can see the countries and regions that are participating over on the left side of the slide. So we are taking it with us, and we will also look at exploring, getting in more examples and more exercises. But this is at least, it's a start, and it's out there, and it can be used by everyone. So by that, let me see. Now my slide. I would declare the Toolbox for launched, and you are more than welcome to use it, and we'll be monitoring and seeing how it's being used, and see what we can get of that. The research partners that have been part of developing this. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Also injured. There's an idea presented from Maria in Finland. You could make the tool and the PDF forms that could be downloaded from the web page. That's an idea, so you could think about that. I also want to first of all thank you to Injured for presenting this toolbox, and I will remind the audience that this this is based on research, and the role of PIRIS was to test and validate and further develop. So we have based this on research, and we have used this for our mapping exercises in the beginning of the project. So this to explain how this have been used during the period of PIRIS, and it's very interesting to learn that others are willing to and wanting to build on this further. There was a question to Daniel, a very short one, Ricardo.
Yes, good morning, everybody. For me, the presentation of Daniel was very interesting because we are thinking in developing some working spaces in our province. In fact, Daniel pointed out the thing of teleworking. And well, we are thinking on the opportunity that this kind of places could give to rural areas, thinking on the people living in urban areas that, especially after the pandemic, are thinking on living in a quiet place with not much population, where it could be a place healthier and with less risk of getting infected by the virus. So I was thinking if most of you are thinking that this could be an opportunity to resettlement people from urban areas into the rural areas, and if this kind of people can telework in these kind of spaces, because if they move into rural areas at the beginning, it's hard to make relations with the rest of the population. So it has several advantages to make social contacts, to have some equipment that you cannot allow being in your place. And I don't know if the rest of the people thinks that it could be an opportunity to resettlement people in rural areas. That's my question.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I will just comment. I think it was both a question, but most of all a comment from you, Ricardo. And this is, of course, something that we have been very aware of, the opportunity to use the lessons learned from the COVID for the pandemic to give clear emphasis on this way of developing what you could call networks in rural areas. So I think we will not open for discussion now. It's not thought about that in the program. We will pay respect for the break, and I asked you to be back at 11:10. Er du der, Lasse?
Noe jeg kan hjelpe til med, Lars, eller? Du har ikke lyd på det.
Jeg prøvde å laste opp denne her presentasjonen min I stad, men jeg fant ikke han at det, men jeg kan da for så vidt vente med det til. Jeg kan nett prøve.
Hvis du har vinduet, så kan det ikke være noe.
Nei, skal vi se. Ser du noe nå, eller?
Ja da, vi ser position paper. Det den du skal ha. Så hvis du tar på presentasjonsmodus, så kan du bare la det stoppe.
Ja, det kan jeg. Skal vi se. Jeg vet ikke hvem det var som prøvde å ringe nå.
Hvis du vent litt nå, Lars.
Ja, nå var det bedre.
Nei, men det ble ikke det. Nå viser du notatsidene dine. Gå tilbake, og så skrur du av presentasjonsvisning. Jeg skal bare gå tilbake, trykk escape. Så hvis du går inn I PowerPointen.
Var det sånn det stod da, eller?
Nei, men du har presentasjonsvisning I PowerPointen. Hvis du går inn I PowerPointen nå, så går du på visning. Nei, unnskyld. Sorry. Lysbildefremvisning. Oppe på menyen.
Ja.
Og så ser du at du har haket av bruk presentasjonsvisning borte til høyre der, under automatskjerm, altså det borterste feltet.
Ja.
Der avhaket, sant?
Ja.
Da tar du vekk den.
Ok.
Hvis du ikke må bruke presentasjonsvisning. Da,
Nei, det har jeg ikke bruk for.
Nei. Og da går du tilbake igjen, og så starter du opp igjen på nytt, så slipper du den.
Ja, skal vi se. Var det rett nå?
Jeg ser ikke noe foreløpig da, men deler du?
Da må jeg kanskje helt ut at det da, skal vi se. Sånn. Der kom man I vanlig, og så nå kommer man I sånn.
Jeg ser ingenting, jeg.
Nå setter jeg nett på nå.
Ser du? Jeg ser ikke noe. Det ser ikke ut som du deler nå. Har du fremdeles presentasjon på I en av variantene dine? Eller? Der kommer noe. Her kommer noe.
Ja, okay.
Der den oppe. Nå den oppe. Full skjerm.
Bra.
Kan han bare stå.
Ja. Okay. Are people back again? Now I have my presentation up, so I cannot see people, but Ingjerd, Jan, is everything okay?
Looks perfect. So
Yeah.
we can just start.
I just got a message from the one who's taking care of the technicalities, and he has no electricity, and that's why he asked maybe Ingjerd and Jan if you could help me to on the technical matters, because Lasse is not available because the electricity is away from where he is living. So hope that's okay.
That's okay.
Then welcome back. Hope you have had a cup of coffee and maybe something to eat during the short break. It's also possible to take the cup of coffee back with you. I think people have learned that during this period of COVID-19. So I can't see it, but I can imagine that there are people with a good cup of coffee now sitting around. So we are now starting the second part of our final conference, and we have made a P-Iris position paper. And why have we done that? Because it's not something that Inter-Europe tells us to do, but we have done it because as I said in the introduction, Inter-Europe projects is about improving the implementation of policy instruments, and we have made this to sum up our messages to our policy makers. So that's the reason. So the target group is the policy makers, or the managing or regional managing authorities. I remind you about the full title of the project. Policies to improve rural areas innovation system by professionalizing networking activities and use of innovation tools. And of course, you must understand the context. This is to deliver some messages to our managing authorities about innovation networks in rural areas. So I think it's very important to start by underlining this context of the project. The target group is not the European Union, it's the managing authorities of our regions. We, of course, had to limit our number of messages, so we ended up with seven key messages for regional managing authorities. The first message is about young people, that you need to recognize young people as a key target group. And the digital skills of young people must be recognized as a potential change maker for rural areas. Distance is less important. If we were not aware of this earlier, the pandemic has now shown us. And as commented in the chat by Maria, and also in the question or comment from Ricardo, this is very clear now that distance is something that can be handled in another way, and for young people, they have the skills to take advantage of this. So young people is a key target group when we're speaking about innovation networks and the future of our rural areas. Then we have a second message. Yesterday we had a workshop on this topic, living labs and the smart village future. And try to summarize what we learned yesterday. Villages may be a testbed for solutions that can be upscaled. That's one thing. And then, of course, attract entrepreneurs from anywhere to take part if the village is preparing themselves to act together with the entrepreneurs to be a testbed to develop new solutions. And of course, together with village people, businesses may develop solutions suited for rural areas or small towns. So it's two dimensions of this, that there will be a possibility to develop things that is suitable for rural areas, and also that rural areas can be attractive for innovation and for entrepreneurs based on the fact that it's an ideal place to use as a living lab. And one of the things that is makes this the villages ideal is the short distance between people, and then I'm speaking about people from different sectors. So this was illustrated yesterday by the island of Utsira in Rogaland, where a lot of companies found that this was an ideal place to test before upscaling. So this is maybe, and we think it's an underused asset. So this is something that could be developed. That's one. Message 2. Message 3. It's about remote working and co-working spaces. This has been presented by Daniel and commented by Maria and Ricardo in the chat, as said. I think that co-working spaces could be used also in urban areas, but I think it's especially suitable for the very rural areas. Co-working spaces seems to be where co-working spaces may be attractive for entrepreneurs to be connected to an environmental environment, innovative environment, I mean. I think that when we are speaking about innovation networks, we are often speaking about networks with a very clear target. But in the very rural areas, then you cannot think like that. You need to think that you should create a space where people can work together, and often they will have their main contacts other places, so this is very informal networks. But for during our project, we have identified this as very important, and I think it should be something to consider for the more rural areas or the very rural areas. Then our fourth message. We have launched 4 models to connect rural innovation networks to the outside world. And one of the things that is important for rural innovation networks is that they are very often not complete. I discovered this in my own region, where there was innovative milieus around in small towns, but they lacked the connection to research institutions, for example, and they were eager to make connections outwards. And so we have been working a lot in, especially in Norway, in my county, with making the connections between the incomplete innovation networks to the clusters in towns. And as I said initially, we need to find out models and understanding of innovation networks in rural areas and not copy what's done in the urban areas. So one of the things that we have been working a lot on is the hub node connection, as we have called it, or often mentioned as urban-rural connections. This was studied also in Milano when we visited Lombardia in last year, or more than a year ago. And this have been also something that we have been bringing up to the national authorities running the national cluster program in Norway, that it's important to include rural innovation networks in the cluster policies. In this slide, we present 4 different models. The co-working space is presented by Daniel, and it's here. We have made an image that the people are working together, but maybe in different directions. So this is a special one. And the others, where we have more the innovation networks with a clearer target, that are more targeted. Sometimes we see that it's important to have rural connections and maybe a weak connection to the urban clusters. Then it's the one I have already described, the one where innovation networks in rural areas connect with the strong clusters in cities. And we have also a model where an innovation network in a rural area can take a position in a value chain. And this is something that we have seen in Norway. And I think that this is important to notice, because if you have a cluster, thinking about clusters, that this is something that is geographically concentrated and very concentrated in the cities where you have the universities and the big firms and so on, then it's a little space for including the rural innovation networks. But if you start thinking about value chains, then there will be a position for a network, an innovation network in rural areas, to take part in the value chain. And we have also, if you use Florø in our area as an example, it's a small town of 10,000 inhabitants approximately. They have taken a position as a lead in a value chain. So that's also a possibility if you have high ambitions. So to conclude, the prestigious cluster programs around should include rural innovation networks in a way, and this is something we have been working with in Norway, and we are also working with this towards the test and demonstration facilities, a program called Catapult in Norway. So this is an important recommendation. The 5th message. We have addressed the problem of fragmentation as a reason to create innovation networks, but we also address this towards the managing authorities. An innovation network needs to access support for every step, finance, advice, and relevant infrastructure that facilitates for learning and for test and demonstrations. So this have been I mentioned before, but this is an important message, and 4 of the 6 partners have pointed at access to test and demonstration facilities as a weak point. And this is something to think about, because it's a possible rural advantage that you can create cooperation between people with practical tacit knowledge and people with theoretical expertise. In the rural areas, you will find often find people with industrial expertise or practical expertise of some kind, and together with people from the academia or with the theoretical expertise, they can work together in a test if you have very good test and demonstration facilities. So to concentrate these test and demonstration facilities only in urban areas is maybe an idea that will not make it. Then you will not benefit from the possibility to develop this cooperation with people with practical tacit knowledge. So this is an important message. Of course, as I already said, it's important that the holistic support system is seamless, that you are able to understand the innovation as a process step by step, from discovering the idea, developing the idea, then maybe and maybe not you need the research, and then it's about testing and demonstration and eventually launch in the market. So the support system needs to take care of all the steps, and it's about advice, finance, and of course infrastructure, as mentioned. Of course, the broadband, I haven't mentioned broadband, but this is of course part of necessary infrastructure. So that was our message 5. Our message 6, develop skills in innovation network management. And Ingjerd has just presented our toolbox, and this was done, so I hope you got a glimpse of it. I think I would sum up with 3 words. Time is money. So people who are taking part in cooperation, they would like the cooperation to be very targeted, and they would like to have somebody managing an innovation network that is able to give priority and focus to the important work. And they would like to have an innovation network that is concentrating or focusing on that something should be produced, there should be something coming out of this, and that you should avoid ending up being a place to speak and talk together. It should be more focused than that. So then you need to develop skills, or the capacity building, as it's sometimes referred to. And our last message, a proactive public sector is vital. This illustrates the size of the boxes, illustrates the importance, and our main message is that the proactive public sector is more important for the rural innovation system than for the urban one. And we have also illustrated a bit of distance to research and development, and of course it needs to be addressed. And we have also illustrated that businesses is not one thing, it's about existing businesses, it's about the finance sector, and it's about the entrepreneurial actors. So trying to build innovation systems is something that is focused very much, but this message is the public sector is more important in rural innovation systems than in urban innovation systems. So I don't, this is our 7 key messages. You will find it in the position paper that we have sent out. There are some amendments that we need to do. I apologize for sending out old version to everyone, and you will have the new version after this final conference. And we have also discovered some mistakes that we will correct, and you will have it after, in a few days. So innovation is increasingly about cooperation, about effective innovation networks. So the time when we're speaking about the inventor sitting alone in one place and working on his own, that time is not so, it's not the correct description anymore. That's why we think PIRIS is addressing an important issue. And we are now delivering these messages to our managing authorities, and our key question is, what of the PIRIS messages are most important to boost innovation in your rural areas? So then I leave the word to Simona to moderate discussion among those who are receiving our messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars, for your clear presentation of the policy recommendations that we give in PIRIS. So it's my pleasure to open the roundtable. And before doing so, I apologize for 2 things. One is that I will leave the speakers 6 minutes to talk, and I will signal when the time is approaching if I have not the impression that they are going to sum up. And the second thing is that probably, at least for some of you, I will have a very poor pronunciation of your name. So please feel free to correct it when you start speaking. So now I give the word to our speaker, not to take more time. And the question for all of you is which of the key messages that we are giving in PIRIS, which of them is you think is more important in your region to boost innovation in rural areas? Our guests are the managing authorities or the representative for the 6 regions that took part in the PIRIS project. So we open with our guest, with our Norwegian guests, Vestland County Municipality, Mr. Jan Hegheim, Director of the Department of Innovation and Economic Development.
Hello, Simona. I don't think you have to apologize for your pronouncing the names, or maybe my name was quite easy. You made it very well. First of all, I would like to thank the PIRIS project for addressing the position paper to us. It's very short. It's the points are very easy to adapt to read, and I guess we will we will try to implement this in some kind quite soon. First of all, I would point at the seventh advice, not as my main message, but we work continuously under the fact that a good public sector must take another and stronger position in rural areas compared with urban ones. That was I think the last point, but I will underline this because if we miss this understanding, we will have trouble finding the solutions for the other advices in this document. And I will always also underline the fact that we have to pay respect for the challenges that the urban systems also face, because a good rural system will always be dependent of good national systems, innovation systems, so to speak. But anyway, we are quite dependent on strong urban systems. So that is also a kind of base for my reflections here. After our opinion, the most important key message, and I must underline the fact that at our stage, because this can be different from where you from the different point of view. Our stage tells us that in general, to develop skills innovation networks in innovation network management, number 6. As I see it, this is the core of the P-IRIS project, and we have. I've been in this working with these matters for a bit more than 10 years. And the difficult part is to develop these innovation network skills. But I must also say that I have been watching a great improvement in these performances during these 10 years. It's a big difference between 2010 and 2020-21 in Western County, considering these matters. But if we point at number 6 as very important, it's also important to mention number 4 and 5. Yesterday we had 2 outstanding examples from Eid in the north of Western County, and from Utsira, which is west of the Rogaland county's coast. Small community. But if we look at these, well, at least seen from the outside, successful stories, there are 2 possible scenarios from an urban point of view, and I'm saying this with a smile, but there are two possible scenarios. One, they will be considered as very good, but you should move to an urban site so you can develop. That is the first. Second, you're not so good, so you should move to the urban system to develop. That means if this is the understanding, and if this is the main thing said, it is very, very difficult to establish a kind of platform or a possibility to develop rural systems. So if these networks, as we were told yesterday, are based on local businesses or resources or competence or whatever, this is not possible. So how to connect and how to create these skills in innovation networking in a rural part? To get a right understanding for building and developing a test lab facility in a rural area, it is, from my point of view, a matter of politics. But how do we establish the right understanding? Well, internal establishment is quite easy, actually. My experience is that to fund a kind of system like this is not the worst thing. At least in our country, we have the resources if we want to use them, but the problem is to maintain the maintenance of a certain time, and also to restore, so to speak, for new challenges after a few years. This is the demanding part. To establish is easy. To maintain and renew is difficult. External, of course, the financing.
Sorry, may I ask you to get to the conclusions?
Oh yes, of course.
Thank you.
Time is running very quick.
Yeah.
The conclusions for our side is to ask the question how to develop a sustainable hub node network for creating these skills, as we pointed at in number 6. And the conclusion is that we must consider that county include in our mission letters to the major actors to actually the cluster management, for instance, to actually emphasize or put in efforts to create these hub node networks for creating skills. Sorry if I spent too much time.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your considerations. And we go now to Italy, Lombardy region. We have Dario Sciunnac, which has been the managing authority of PRDF Lombardy Regional Operational Program in 2014-2020. And my personal hope is that he will be the managing authority also for the next programming period. Can we put up his slides, or should we ask him to do it?
Could Dario do it, because our technical manager is out of electricity?
Okay, okay. So Dario, can you take your presentation rights?
Yeah, I will try and share my screen. Hello, everybody. Hope that you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, I thank the PIRIS team for giving me this opportunity to participate in their final meeting. Hope that my slides can be seen. Okay, just a very few words about Lombardy. Some of you got to know Lombardy during the regional visit of 2019. You realize that it's a rather composite region with large metropolitan areas in the plain, in the Po Plain area, in the Po Plain, and smaller communities in the mountain valleys. So I think that in our peculiar regional setting, the key messages from PIRIS, and I join, of course, Mr. Hegheim in appreciating the consistency and the thoughtfulness of the action plan of the project. I think that the most relevant addresses in our region are message 3 and message 6, for the reason that I'm going to comment on. Let us see if it works. Page down. I'm afraid that I have a problem with the display option. You are still...
Yes, we see the first slide still.
Okay. Oh, we have a problem.
I have a copy of your presentation, so I can display it, and you just tell me when to switch slides.
Okay, so can we move to... let us see. Okay, this works. Okay, can you see slide 2? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. In my opinion, co-working spaces are something really strategic in our region because a very important phenomenon in Lombardy over the last decades has been commuting. Lombardy is a highly polycentric regions, according to a very recent study by the Bocconi University. This has contributed a lot also to the spread of the COVID pandemics, unlikely. And this dynamics is rather polycentric, but as you can see, is largely focused on the metropolitan area of Milan. 10 years ago, during the last national poll that will be made again in 2021, so unfortunately data are a bit old, 1,500,000 workers have entered daily the boundaries of a cities that only recently has trespassed the threshold of 1.4 billion inhabitants. So practically the population of Milan during a working day is twice as much as in a holiday. And this has also harsh implications on public and private transport and on the quality of life in general, not mentioning air pollution and related issues. This is why I think that the diffusion of co-working spaces in the region might help to improve the current scenario by prevent part of the commuting fluxes that, of course, come in a large part from the rural areas. Actually, co-working spaces already exist. There has been a certain development of co-working spaces, let us say, since 2017, 2018. And they are concentrated, of course, in the urban areas, such as Milan or Brescia. But the good news is that there have been some also in rural areas. In 2019, you visited Val Camonica, and actually at least two co-working spaces exist in the valley, and this is an encouraging signal. Also because the investment in setting co-working spaces can be supported by the European Regional Development Fund or the European Social Fund due to the coherence, to the consistency with the general scope of both programs. And of course, the pandemics has enhanced unluckily this dynamics.
Dario, sorry, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, and I will do that because my last suggestion is about option 6, the message 6, because in Lombardy we have good indicators as far as digital skills and related professional skills are concerned, at least in the Italian scenario, but also compared to our main European competitors that are the other 3 motors for Europe. But there is a certain gap, a certain delay in the development of intermediate skills, and in general in a mismatch between the demand for qualified labor force by the enterprises and the employee offer. That's why I think that option 6 would be strategic for us. Thank you, and sorry for being a bit late.
Thank you very much. I know it's a demanding request to say everything in 6 minutes. So thank you very much. And let's go to our Croatia region, county of Primorje and Gorski Kotar. Vice Mayor Petar Mamula.
Hello, everybody. I don't know, do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Connection is okay. Thank you very much for the invitation, especially Daniel from PINS, who invited me to say a few words about our view on networking and skills in rural areas. I should say that we have some experience in matters, key messages 1 and 3. So young people and digital skills in your rural areas, and 3 is co-working spaces. I should emphasize that I would like to emphasize that key message 1 especially is important for us, because for a couple of years we are developing a project of developing and building broadband infrastructure for fast internet in our rural areas, the mountain part of our county called Gorski Kotar, and that is because we believe that for developing that areas is that kind of infrastructure is very important, because we need also to attract young educated people who only need that kind of infrastructure to settle down in the area, to work from that rural areas, and to in that way to rebuild the competencies in that area. You know, we had for decades long negative selection. People left that mountain areas for mainly for education purposes, yeah, and they stayed in big cities that they were educated because in Gorski Kotar we didn't have any workplaces that are compatible to their schools they finished. Yeah, so that's first point. The second one, actually, the third key message Daniel and other speakers talked about a little is co-working. As we see it, as I see it, it's necessary to in that mountain part and other rural parts of our county to rebuild confidence and trust between people, because we now have a number of communities that are living, so to say, people are living next to each other, and we do not have community in the full sense of the word. So I think co-working spaces are really the living labs of how to establish, community in real sense of the word, by sharing experience, developing new skills. People are rebonding again. It's something that most of the people in rural areas forgot what it is. So there are really two key messages that we in Primorje Kotar County think that are important. All of are important, but I would also like to emphasize one more. I think the colleague from Norway speak about it. It's the key message 7. About political representatives. Too often, in my view, in Croatia is the case that too often we are adapting everything politics, politicians, political processes, you know. And I think that it should be actually the other way around. The politicians should be political representatives should be actually facilitators of some processes in the community. We need to sit together, political representatives, citizens, and experts from mainly from urban areas, from universities, to together find the best solutions to first to build a network, and then to use that network for developing some entrepreneurial activities in the areas. So we are actually, as a county, going in that direction. We are developing broadband infrastructure, and parallel we are giving support to establish, not just in mountain part, but in all rural municipalities, to establish some social spaces where young people could sit down, could meet, could brainstorm, exchange experiences. You know, could in that spaces we are offering them to some key experts to present them with the new trends, with something that they are actually interested in. So
sorry, can you please come to the conclusion very fast?
Yeah, it's actually I've covered the all that I want to say. So 1 and 3 key messages are for us very important. I'm glad that Daniel and PINS, as our local developing agency in the mountain part, are going that way to develop co-working spaces. But also I emphasize the importance of key message 7.
Thank you very much. So from Central Ostrobothnia, a beautiful region in Finland, we have Anne Sormunen, Manager of International Affairs. The floor is yours, Anne. No, we don't hear you.
Is it?
Now we hear you.
Good. Take this off. I'm happy to be here, and greetings to you all. I'm representing the managing authority of the region Central Ostrobothnia, and we've been a member in this P-Iris project from the start, and the P-Iris has actually affected to the way we are targeting our ERDF. We have increased the allocation and trying to get new projects in tourism and creative sector along, also in cultural heritage issues. Our region profile is very industrial and entrepreneurial, but that is also weakness in a way that our young people don't get employed in a way, and we would like to strengthen the role of the young people within the region, and also having that in the administration and participatory structures as well, so that the young people feel that they are active in planning their own future here and affecting their own living environment more and more. We have also used these themes about remote working, co-working, virtual incubators, and young people's position in preparing, for example, Interreg programs. I am currently in the writing group of Interreg Aurora program, which is a new Interreg program covering the northern parts of Norway, Sweden, and Finland. So the thematic is getting wider, and also there we are increasing the people-to-people actions, increasing smaller project opportunities, and also including the culture and intangible cultural heritage issues, along with making it more easy also the civic societies and third sector to come a member in a project, also in an Interreg program. So I think this is something that I look very positive into. And something that this Corona era has bring more concrete with us is also that young people may study longer within the region, not needing to go to the urban areas, and maybe probably they could start a family and stay longer, and it's easier to switch between university studies and work, also increasing the possibilities and acceptance of remote studying and remote working. We have very high-speed optical fiber within the whole region, so it's very easy to work in the forest in a way, and also make concrete actions to keep our whole remote area and villages livable. And I see the strength of the remote working and co-working spaces especially important in villages. And we have a vivid discussion here in Finland at the moment about the status of village schools, for instance, in primary education, because we have community elections during April in Finland. So the role of villages in rural areas and how municipalities are providing services in rural area municipalities is also one important question. If I have still time, I would like to add that also
yes, you have 1 minute and a half.
That we have acknowledged is that we are following closely the well-being, especially the well-being of the young people that are now studying remote, and it may be hard for them to adjust the current Corona time. So we have emphasized the communities to involve young people more, and also the schools to improve the social skills in the educational processes, because along with digital skills that young people do have, they need also strong social skills, and this remote time is not easy in learning and practicing the social skills. So that's one kind of thing that regionally we are looking into, and we are now making a big well-being study. We do that every 5 years, and we will see how the pandemic is changing the well-being analyzed by the specialists of this area. It's a very vast study, and we think it's very important that we get the results this year, and we can make refer that to the previous analysis. But something this we are very interested to work with the other regions we have already worked with, and especially maybe Erasmus, COSME, EU direct funding, or within the Interreg Europe or other Interreg programs. We are willing to promote rural areas, increasing the entrepreneurial activities and young people's position.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is from Heart of Slovenia, in particular from LAG, Heart of Slovenia, which is an organization which joined together 6 municipalities from Heart of Slovenia, and is the managing authority for the community-led local development instrument funds. I let the floor to Mitja Bratun, manager from Heart of Slovenia, from LAG Heart of Slovenia, sorry.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to today's roundtable and sharing position paper with our local action group, Heart of Slovenia. LAC Heart of Slovenia covers the area of 6 municipalities in the center of Slovenia and was established in the year 2007. Till now, we already prepared 2 strategies of local development, and this year we will start preparing the 3rd one for next programming period 2021 till 2027. We find key messages in position paper very useful for preparing our new strategy. The 3rd one, co-working spaces and their cooperation, and the 5th one, with creating fruitful cooperation between people with practical tacit knowledge and people with theoretical expertise, are very worth considering and debating when we'll be preparing our new strategy. But the message we find most interesting and useful is the 1st one, the one that recognize and take advantage of the digital skills of young people. It is very important to recognize young people as the target group in our next strategy, and through public tenders support projects with digital infrastructure. We will also consider to add in our public tender new criteria to support digitalization and development of networking skills among project partners. This kind of tools and project outputs are very useful for future development of our rural area. As we see, the development is long-term process, which includes bottom-up approach of all key actors, especially young people sharing their knowledge. Again, thank you for sharing your position paper with us and its key messages. It will be a useful tool for our future work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your key indications, for your clear indications. So last but not least, we go to the region of Castilla y León. We have a representative for the managing authority of this Spanish region. I let the floor to Beatriz Casado, Director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Department in the Institute for Business Competitiveness. And we are going to hear from your point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simona. And first of all, thank you very much to all the partners and especially to Sodegur for inviting us to take part in the event, and congratulations to all the project partners for the interesting outcomes of the project PIRIS. First of all, I want to give a very brief view about Castilla y León in order to understand better the context. I only say that we are the 3rd biggest region of the European Union with 9 provinces. And in fact, to give a more impressive idea, I say that we are bigger than Portugal and bigger than 16 member states. So you can travel from east to west more than 500 kilometers. So it's really difficult to cover all these huge areas with in some cases with digital connections, for instance. And at the same time, we are leading the loss of population in Spain, but the biggest problem is really the aging population, as our more young people migrate to other regions and countries. So in Castilla y León, the challenge is the size of the territory linked with the aging population, because these people have been abandoned for several years, the rural areas, and the rural areas are quite far from the urban centers, and in some cases, lack of the necessary infrastructure to enable new people to settle. So for the Business Competitiveness Institute, which I represent, is an entity that promotes the regional development in the region. To retain and to attract the talent is one of our main priorities. So I think that we need to take full advantage of the conclusions of this interesting project. And I like an African proverb that says, I think it fits very well. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go farther, go together. So I have considered 2 main issues that I think would be relevant for Castilla y León. The first one, I think, is also linked with some of the other issues, but is the general recommendation to generate a real innovative ecosystem in rural areas with the stakeholders, creating with them alliances, programs, and to connect them at a global level. So with this philosophy, we have been working, especially from 2017, and we have created what we call Entrepreneurship and Innovation Network with multiple stakeholders, like the science and innovation system, but at the same time with local and regional governments and also with European, national and international platforms, trying to bring together cross-functional expertise and knowledge and to build and to develop common programs. So especially we have been working also in some rural areas with local networks and trying to face with them specific and rural challenges, which is really difficult. So in this sense, I think as Sodebur, we are trying to be a proactive administration, and because we have a privileged knowledge of the existing capacities and how to connect it. And I totally agree with your recommendation to connect these local networks, to connect them outside the wall, of Castilla-León with other national and international networks, and to promote the cross-innovation among different sectors, value chains, and territories. And I think the pandemic context is more important than ever. There are no limits to put together easily different communities, if you have, of course, the right infrastructure. And on the other hand, I want to highlight the importance of the youth as a key target group. Young people can be the key and the driving force for changing rural areas, where talent must not only be retained, but also be attracted. And how to retain and to attract talent is an imperative for us, it's not an option. And it's not easy, and I agree about the importance of certain services like, there is a lot of noise, sorry. I know, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. We also hear some noise, but we hear you well.
Okay, so the quality digital infrastructure, access to informal networks, access to training, and of course to skills, and in some cases in disruptive digital technologies like IoT, cybersec, drones, where young people can be passionate about working in interesting and technological projects and challenges that could be launched from rural areas. Why not? That can contribute in a collaborative way to solve some challenges of the territory, and in this way to attract these new people. So as a conclusion, as I am the last one, for me the challenges is how to engage these local stakeholders. I think the other regions have mentioned, to motivate, to rebuild the trust, and on the other hand, how to make these networks sustainable in the time. And on the other hand, if we want to not only to retain, but also to attract the talent, the young people in the rural areas, how to do it is really a key factor for us. So we will keep an eye in the conclusions of the project, and I hope the collaboration could continue in the future and we will be really fruitful for Castilla-León. I think this is what Interreg Europe is about in a very successful way. So congratulations again, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Beatriz. So we can conclude our roundtable. Thank you all the speakers for their indication and their suggestions and their doubts and on how to proceed with these recommendations. That just for fun, I tried to keep the score, and I think the recommendation that got more, let's say, more interest is the one about co-working spaces and remote workplace. Probably also due to the recent pandemic, this theme is becoming more important. So I give back the word to Lars, our project leader.
Yeah, thank you, Simona, for doing this job for us. In the program, it says adoption of the position paper, and we have discussed adoption. What's that? But it's only to be sure that the managing authorities or those who have been partner in this, taking part in this roundtable, that they will take this position paper further to distribute it and following up within their organizations. So nobody has indicated that they will not do that. So in this understanding of what of the word adopted, then I think that we have a conclusion that people find this position paper something they will follow up on. So if somebody think that I now made a coup, then they need to say take the floor and say that they will not do it. But I think that this is not controversial at all, and that you will you have indicated that this is of interest for you to follow up on. So then we will distribute this, and we will present it as something that was discussed during the final conference of PIRIS, and that we will we will say we will also distribute it by saying that it was well received. So that must be that must be the conclusion from after listening to the roundtable. Nobody is shouting anything, so then we will move to the conclusive comments. First of all, we decided to have intervention from the Inter-Europe at the end of the program, so that you had also the possibility to say something about PIRIS and this final conference as part of Inter-Europe, and the floor is yours, and then at the end and afterwards, Jan Heggheim will have the floor for the closing remarks. Yep. Okay, at the end.
Thank you very much, Lars, and good morning, almost good afternoon to all of you from sunny Lille and cold as well. So sad that we are not able to meet together in Norway as it was originally planned, but still very happy to have been able to participate to this final conference, at least on the online version. I'm going to share my presentation. I hope everything is okay. Indeed, I'm the policy officer following PIRIS for a couple of years now, and the idea of this presentation is to go quickly, as Lars was saying, to conclude a little bit and to give maybe the program view on what the project has been achieving so far, while it goes towards its end. I give as well a couple of information for the people that are not yet aware of what Interreg Europe is about, but I'm pretty sure that most of the people in the audience know what it is about, and then say as well a couple of words about the future of the program for the next programming period. So first, but I'm pretty sure all of you know, indeed, Interreg Europe is all about regional development and how we can learn, and how policymakers in all regions in Europe can learn from each other by sharing good practices in our different thematic objective, research innovation, for example, for PIRIS, and how managing authorities, peripheral and rural regions as well, that are very well represented in our projects, can share, can involve stakeholders, and can make sure that their public policies will be improved thanks to this sharing of good practices. We had 4 calls so far, 258 projects that were running. Some of them are already closing and closed. More than 2,000 partners in 30 countries all over Europe. And you can see here the figure of 88% of NETS 2, meaning that almost all of the regions in Europe are covered by at least one Interreg Europe project. We are really proud as well to have, that our projects actually achieved so many outputs with more than 3,000 good practices. I'm always a bit amazed by these kind of figures. 12,000 people as well said that thanks to an Interreg Europe project, they saw their skills, their competencies improved, and 900 action plans were delivered by so many partner regions involved in so many Interreg Europe projects. So as you can see, we are well ahead in the target that we set for the cooperation program at the very beginning of Interreg Europe. But it's not only about achieving these outputs. Of course, it's also having a result in the region, on the ground. And here we are always very happy as well to say that 500 policy changes were reported by 155 projects. So sometimes the same project partner managed to achieve different policy changes by changing the definition of a call and then supporting new projects, for example, that were applying to this call. So further amplifying the change in the region. And there's almost already 1 billion euros of funds that have been influenced thanks to all these changes, meaning that for every euro that we put in one project, there's 3 euros that are influenced and changed and improved on the ground in the different regions. That was the first pillar of the program, and the second pillar, and PRIS has been involved in it as well, is the policy learning platform. So how the team of experts that we have for the different thematic objectives gather this community of 18,000 members and help them to further share good practices between projects, so not only in the project but between them, and also provide webinars, workshops. Well, it used to be physical, it turned online, but hopefully it will resume physical events soon enough, and as well peer reviews. And of course, PRIS and yourself, Lars, and your county were involved in a peer review and hosting a peer review last September or October, if I recall correctly. So that was also, showing that it's not only about the project; it's also about the other services that Interreg Europe can provide. For COVID-19 challenges, all of the speakers today talked about this because, of course, it has a huge impact, and I'm so glad really to see that the topic tackled by PRIS was so relevant as well, even if unpredicted, but so relevant at the end of the day to the challenges that occurred because of COVID-19. We developed a couple of measures to further help our project and to highlight some of the good practices that were maybe even more interesting and even more relevant during these difficult times. The policy learning platform experts as well managed tailor support. I was talking about online peer reviews or online webinars. So how to make sure that this sharing of knowledge still goes on. And actually, there's another activity that we can now offer to project partners everywhere in Europe is an additional call for activities. So in a way, the idea is open. So it's open to all approved projects, so already approved projects, so the 258, even the one that are closing or already closed. And the idea is to give you, project partners, the possibility to further exchange experiences on the topic of COVID-19, what maybe some topics that you were not able to discuss beforehand because the crisis arrived too late, let's say, in the project life, and possibly as well develop pilot actions if there's a need for this. So we expect this call to be approved by our monitoring committee by the end of March and to open the call around May, June. But if there's already something coming up from PRIS project partners, then don't hesitate to contact me and Alexis, the finance officer, so we can further help you and answer maybe your first questions on this. The idea is really to give you a chance to further build on the lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis and how each region managed to face it or not, and how we can further discuss on what could be done. Just a few words about the project in innovation capacity, where PRIS is integrated, let's say. As you can see, all the different points, grapefruits, tomatoes, we can name it, show the lead partners for each project. There's 53 projects working on innovation capacity, and more focused, there's 10 projects focusing on rural areas, so including PRIS. Some others are islands of innovation, for example, very specific on islands, innovation in islands. Ratio as well, very similar to PRIS in a way. Erudite and Copernicus more on the digital side of the rural development. And then 5 other projects that are focusing more on support for SMEs in rural areas, for example, retail, or for transportation systems and schemes. What I was really impressed, maybe three key points for PRIS after following it for many years. What I could maybe highlight, and that has been highlighted already, it's that the rural development is really a key issue in Europe. And you can see that through the different presentations that we had today, we can see that all these issues were tackled in a way or another by one or several project partners. The digitalization of rural areas, the support to local businesses, the reinforcement of local communities, the focus of youth as well that you were mentioning, Lars, and as different project partners. So I think that's really something interesting, and even more during this COVID-19 crisis. What I found as well very interesting is to have news and updates on these 2 pilot actions from Slovenia and Croatia on co-working spaces, and how, even though it was a bit challenging because of COVID-19, still you managed to attract young entrepreneurs and young people that want to share, to learn more, and to work together in the region. So I think it was really interesting. And for the project itself, it's this almost 50 people that said that thanks to the project, they had their capacity increased, they increased their skills, their competencies, 3 policy instruments that were improved, and almost €500,000 that were influenced thanks to these changes. And it's not yet the end, because we're still waiting for the last progress report to see what are the final conclusions of the project. It was not only about doing things interesting on the ground, but it's also, and thank you for this, contributing at the program level. So participating at different workshops in Milano or in Hamburg. I remember that you were as well present at our program annual event in April 2019 when it occurred in Brussels. And as I was mentioning, this peer review for the Westland County after the merging of the 2 counties. Just a few words about the future of the program. So what you can expect from us in the years to come. Now that we're back in the regulation, we're not at the very beginning, but now we are back thanks to the European Parliament and the Council. So there will be an Interreg Europe for the period 2021-2027. And we are not yet sure of all the features of the program, but what should occur is that the key features should remain. So it should still be pan-European, except the UK that decided not to join. The objective will remain similar, so it's really about regional development policymakers as a target group, and still a very strong focus on capacity building from and exchanges of good practices between different partners. What we think could be improved, and that's the draft for now, it's maybe to focus a little bit less on structural funds, so to allow as well product partners to focus on other kind of policy instruments that are more relevant for their own region, to focus and to push a little bit more partners to go for the learning by doing, so to include pilot actions maybe earlier in the project life. And also something that could be very interesting is to have only one single priority in the program, a kind of meta priority, focused on capacity building in general, and then to allow as well project partners to tackle maybe more topics and to address them better and in a more relevant way for the region. So that's it on my side. Again, thank you very much for this year's working with you and for this final conference. It was really a pleasure, and I'm really glad again to see the coming ending months of PRIS, and maybe if you apply for this additional call, happy to help you and support you on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you for this information, and thank you for the kind words at the end. It has been a pleasure to working with you in the Secretariat. You have been very helpful, so let me underline this. Well, we are approaching the end. I will say I will give the floor for Jan Eggheim to say the final words.
Thank you, Lars, and thank you to all of you, all partners all over Europe, but Lars and Ingvild in particular, for your efforts and your work over years, actually. But everything must come to an end, and I think we are there now. Well, the end of first stage. Next stage, Etienne, and your keyword was your aggregated results in Interreg was overwhelming to look at. The policy change, I think, is a keyword here. But if these recommendations from the PIRIS could contribute to policy changes in the regions, it would be then we've reached a very good result. There have been spoken a lot about COVID challenges. I must admit that sitting in the middle of the woods, so to speak, I feel more equal with a lot of my co-partners after been working through the screens in a digital mode than I was before. But there are also a lot of disadvantages. For instance, bringing people together to actually experience new methods of working and so on. So we have a lot to do. My hope is that we can change policy, but also keep the good relations between the different regions being involved in this work. And I hope you can keep on with your personal relations in the future, because it's obvious we are facing the same challenges in rural areas, in Croatia, in Italy, in Spain, in Slovenia, in Finland, and in Western Norway. So my last words would be: remember that all business is local business, but we are facing the same challenges. Keep on with the good relations, and thank you for good work. Thank you very much.